I'm not completely sure I've actually digested this book. No. So I'm gonna have to read a bit from the back. But we have Rin, and she aced something called the Keiju words. It's a test to find the most talented students, and in the Nikara Empire, because that's where they are. So it came as a surprise to her and everyone else that she aced that little test, and she just happened to get into the most elite military school called Synagogue. Yeah, so many surprises. Well, so this book starts off as very military school training-esque, but with some elements of fantasy. That quickly evolves into a whole lot of fantasy aspects, and I don't feel like I've digested all the events that have happened, but yeah, so many things. I really like R.F. Kuang's writing. She makes the hard words seem easy. Because this book has a heavy topic and the words in it are big. There are big words in here that, not just like the difficult ones, meaning the not English words, but the English words is big words too. It's a heavy topic. I don't want to say it's heavily written, but it has that element of heaviness as a heavy read reading thing book. It's a heavily read book. But R.F. Kuang does something with these words that just, it simplifies it without it seeming like she's putting you down for being stupid, which I definitely feel when I read her books, but also I feel like I understand, so yeah. This is the first in the trilogy, and I'm waiting for the other installments to arrive. I have them on reserve, but you never know when reserved books arrive, do you? No. I feel like the summarization for each book in this series is gonna be me going, huh? And then having the hardest time ever trying to summarize the whole series. But so far, I'm mind blown. I feel like I'm glad that the first book of hers I read was Babel, and then Yellowface. So completely different genres and topics, but the writing stays the same in a way. But Poppy War, first book, all that. Mind-blowing first book, by the way, so there's that. I'm pretty sure if I ever met her in real life, I would be terrified to speak with her because of awe, because I would be in too much awe. Definitely a favorite author because of the way she writes. Not necessarily the topics and such, but the way she writes. So, book 2 in the Poppy War trilogy. Fuck's sake. The Dragon Republic. So, without spoiling this book, I'm gonna try to like summarize. I don't know, theme seems to be the wrong word to use, but also it's the only word I can think of, but it's not the correct one, so that's bad. That's terrible of me. Anyway, so this book focuses a lot on like the aftermath of the Poppy War, the first book that is, because I think in this one they mentioned there's been like 3 Poppy Wars, and I'm like, what? It focuses a lot on the aftermath of death, and in this one we get not like war stuff, because we get a lot more of that in the first book, but also not really. I'm not sure how to explain that best. Anyway, so aftermath, and then we have mostly like the politics and the prep for war bits in this. So the politics behind wars and why, really why they're doing war. They're planning stuff as it is. They're planning to take down people and governments, well, groups, I suppose, is better word for that, what I'm thinking about. Anyway, so it's a very thick book, by the way, so chunky. The chapters are like 1,000,000 hours long, as in it took me like days to read one chapter. It's oh, it's so hard to say, because it's a very heavy like subject matter, at least for me, and this whole war thing is just tough on my brain, and it being like, it's not very modern, so I have to like rethink a lot of things, and also where it sets in the like China, Japan area. Do they actually say? I mean, it's not. It's a different world, but it's that kind of area of the world for us. And it's so vastly different from what I'm used to. So that also makes my brain do a lot of thinking. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's, yeah, like I said, it's a very heavy subject matter for me. However, the way she writes, it's just so, I don't know, engaging. It just kind of draws you in and lets you know that you're not stupid. You actually understand what's happening, what she's saying, but you know, it's not like, because it's big words books. It's a big wordy book. So it's not like, it's not childishly written. It's not written for a small child, but it's so easy to understand, to like get sucked into. I'm actually, despite it being like war stuff, I'm loving it. I'm so loving it. Not necessarily the plot and stuff, but I'm just loving the way she's written it. It's that, I don't know, it's like, oh, I'm trying to explain it as best as I can, but I don't know if I can. It's kind of like getting all snuggled up, except it's not a cozy book. Does that make any sense? Oh, I don't know. It's just, oh, it's good. It's just good. Yeah, that's my take. Let's see what book 3 is going to be, because I'm pretty sure book 3 is even chunkier than this. So I know it's going to take me a fair bit of time to get through. Yeah. And I'm a bit, it's a daunting undertaking for me, but I'm excited, and I want to know how it finishes, the whole series finishes, because this one definitely like ends on a, well, what happens now kind of a deal. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit. The Burning God, the third and final book in the Poppy War trilogy, and this was a chunker. This was a lot. So, as with book 2, I can't really say a lot about the book without like spoiling the whole thing, but there's a lot of that still going on from like book 2, with the politics and like before and after, and taking over countries, and what you do and what you don't do, and war basically. And there's so much going on. I feel like this whole series, because the first book kind of starts with this girl who's well, not well off, and she's kind of like just working, and to not get married, to not have to get married, she decides, you know, war school seems to be the way to go, and she does the tests and then whatnot and gets in, to many surprises from everyone apparently. Anyway, so the first book is basically just learning how to become a fighter and getting away from not a very good life, and then stuff happens and more stuff happens, and then we have book 2 and 3, which I feel both of them focuses a lot more about the politics behind everything. To really like sum up the whole series, I feel like you have to do a really deep dive into like history and yeah, well, history and the like art of war type thing in the whole trilogy. There are a lot of parts not directly but indirectly taken from history and rearranged to sort of fit the narrative. And then we have like the fancy elements of the gods and stuff, because that's what we have in these books, and we don't really have that in the same way in like real life. In real life history we have like, well, wars because of gods and stuff, but we don't have the gods coming and putting power in us and we doing magic and stuff. Yeah, so it's different, but the way these are written, it's such a heavy subject matter, but I feel like Rebecca Kuang, she's captured this type of history, this type of story, this whole thing. She's captured it in a way that's it's not easy to read because of the subject matter, but that could just be me. But it's very digestible as long as you do it in small chunks, because it's not really the type of subject matter that's for me. But I've been wanting to read this series forever because of the author, and not really much about like the subject matter, as it were, because I read Babel first. It's her first book I read, and then I read Yellowface, because those were kind of the ones I got a hold of before I well, I saw my library had the Poppy War trilogy, so yeah, I got into that. But I've been wanting to read them forever, and it's just, it's a massive undertaking, at least for me, but I've kind of loved it. I don't like the war bits, but there's so much more to war than just, you know, knocking someone on the head and saying I've conquered your country. That's very, that's a very weird way to say that, but sure, why not? No, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot, but I really liked it. I liked it because of the way it's written, I think. Not so much about the subject matter, but there's a whole like, what is her name again? I keep forgetting her name for some reason. I don't know why. So Rin, she goes through a lot. Like, first she's like this meek little girl, and she goes off to war school, and once there she kind of get like banned from things, so she's banned from learning basically, but she's still there. Yeah, it's a lot. So she goes from this meek little girl to like a drug addict, to not so much a drug addict, to like a warlord thing, to something that I'm not really saying anything in the correct order here, but she goes through a lot, like a lot, and she's not I mean, she's not a great character per se, but there's a lot of like, what kind of choices do you have to make as a person in charge, especially during war times and stuff. So there's so many things, and I don't think I'm able to actually go into them. I need to like read this whole trilogy like 10 times, and not even then would I probably be able to do a really deep dive, because I'm not that good. I'm definitely not that good. Someone else could just read it once and be done, but I am not an academic. I cannot do things like that. No, it's not in my forte, as it were. Anyway, that's this book, which means this video is now over. Yay for everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for this undertaking of watching this whole video if you've made it this far. Whew. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. I shall see you all next time. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.